Hello, everybody. Hello. As used to say in the old days, hello, shampoo, hello. Yep. Today is a very, 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 very special day. We're honored to have with us a man of men, a true leader, spirit, and a person out there for the betterment of all, particularly you, because everything he does is for we the people. And it's Robert Kiyosaki and his books, Rich Dad, Poor Dad, bestseller of bestsellers of bestsellers, and a very, very important book of the times that we're going through. The Capitalist Manifesto by Robert Kiyosaki. Again, this guy's the author of international bestsellers. The information he puts out is to help you prepare, prevail, and prosper, particularly in these very difficult times that we're going through. Robert, thanks so much for being on, and welcome.
Thank you, thank you, thank you. I mean, that's that old saying, may you live in interesting times. These are dangerous times. These are more than interesting. Biggest changes in world history. So I'm honored to be in your program.
Well, no, we're honored to have you. Yeah, we. This is a, as I see it, these are the most uh, dangerous geopolitical and socioeconomic times in modern history.
Yes, yes,
We heard this past week, uh, uh, out of his mind, Joe Biden rambling on about the prospects of a nuclear disaster. And this is a guy, by the way, that said we weren't going to be sending troops into Ukraine. And the New York Times, they call themselves the paper of record. I call it the toilet paper of record. They, in all the news that's fit to print, we'll tell you it's fit to print. Yeah, they came out this past Wednesday and said the United States, in fact, does have troops on the ground there, and in terms of the CIA and other special agents.
right.
And so these are, and then we heard Zelensky come out, the guy that's the president of Ukraine, saying that NATO and the United States should do a preemptive attack against Russia,
Yeah,
and that will stop them from doing
yeah,
anything. Brilliant, isn't it?
yeah.
So we look at that, and then we're in an economic crisis, I believe is the worst in modern history,
Right.
with them
Okay.
inflating, artificially pumping up the economy when
Right.
they started the COVID war. What are we, over $30 trillion in debt, $31 trillion in debt. And now you're hearing, by the way, one after another, the IMF, what is it, the International Monetary Fund, they came out this past Thursday and warned of very, very difficult economic times for the entire globe.
Right.
So, what's your take on all this, and what do you think people should do?
Well, we saw this coming a long time ago. That's why I started Rich Dad, Poor Dad. We're 25 years now,
Yeah.
and the book is still internationally on the bestseller lists. And the I wrote Rich Dad, Poor Dad because in 1971, Nixon took the dollar off the gold standard. I call that the corruption of capitalism. You see, what happened is then you could take the dollar. What happened was the French sent warships to America and saying, give us your gold, give us our gold back. Because America broke its promise to the world in 1944, the Bretton Woods Agreement, saying that the US dollar would become the reserve currency of the world, but we would back it with gold. So in 1971, when Nixon took the dollar off the gold standard, I was what 20 something years old. I didn't know what it meant, but and then in 72, I was flying in Vietnam. And so talking about boots on the ground, there've always been boots on the ground. There were boots on the ground, American boots before me. And the CIA was always there in Vietnam. So don't think that, CIA stands for Capitalism's Invisible Army. But at the same time, I was shooting those NVA, and there were white guys running with them. There are Russians. So don't think that it's always borders and everybody wears a white suit or a brown suit, or whatever it is. But anyway, 1971 was a corruption of capitalism. And then the whole world changed. And now we have an economic crisis because instead of fixing the crisis, America prints money. And the Bank of England almost took the world down last week. Their pension funds nearly collapsed. And that's why I wrote the book, Who Stole My Pension, back in 2000. I mean, you can see this stuff coming. And so that's why I started Rich Dad Poor Dad, because we fight back. Since our schools teach us nothing about money, because most school teachers are Marxist, you know, they join labor. I'm not against them. Understand, it's a free country. You want to be a Marxist? It's like you can be a Jew, a Buddhist, Muslim, Mormon, Catholic, Christian. Economics is a religion. So you can be a Marxist and that's your religion. You know, we should give everybody fish. Well, I think we should teach people to fish, but our schools don't teach that. They teach sexual identity or something. I had no problem with my sexual identity. I like girls, you know.
Me
I got
too.
all the time. Just look at, holy Christ, they're such gorgeous creatures, you know. And I couldn't concentrate. So you could tell me I'm a girl, but I had no problem with that one.
Yeah, I hear you. I have one of my books with Zizzy Gave Honey Boy. I have a photo in there of me and Teresa McKelvey at our first communion. We were holding hands and we used to kiss in religious instructions. They say in the Catholic Church that you reach the age of reason at 7 years old. That's why you can receive Holy Communion. I reached the age of reason. I was kissing Teresa McKelvey.
Yeah,
you know,
yeah.
you mentioned 1971. It was all the money spent on the Vietnam War and the guns and butter baloney
Right.
that Lyndon Johnson blew into the economy,
Right.
that artificially inflated it, that
Right.
caused that spiking inflation.
Right.
And it was also the taking us off the gold standard.
Right.
I have a photo, I don't know if you get it over there, it's on the right of the drums, of me and John Connolly. John Connolly was the governor of Texas that took the bullet in the back sitting in front of Kennedy.
Right.
And he wanted to meet me in 1992.
Really?
Yeah, 2 weeks before the presidential election.
Wow.
And the reason being is that in my book, Trend Tracking, Far Better Than Megatrends, Time Magazine, that I wrote in 1989, I had forecast a new third party, and someone like Ross Perot would be the candidate. So Connolly wanted to meet me, and so I flew down to Dallas to meet him. And this is a photo of me, him, and his wife in front of the book depository. You see that?
Wow. That's amazing. That was
his first time. It's his first time back since the assassination. They didn't even go back when they memorialized the place. We're parked out in front in a limousine, and he's telling the story of what happened that day. And without going into the details, but I'm mentioning this because John Connolly, again, was the governor of Texas, the Democratic governor of Texas, but he was the Treasury Secretary under Nixon when they took us off the gold standard.
Wow, I didn't know that.
Yeah. So we're going back into the Anatole Hotel, and he stops and he looks at me. He said, I read your book. He said, a fine piece of work. And he said, I know your heart's in the right place. He said, but you don't have a clue what's going on.
Right.
And neither do the American people. Because if they did, there'd be a revolution in this country.
Right. Right.
That's 1992.
Right.
And by the way, this was a T-shirt. I just found this that I got made up. Beware a Slick Willie.
Yeah.
The clown that became the president of the United States.
And his wife nearly made it.
These are the imbeciles, morons, and arrogant little freaks that are running and ruining our lives. and you look at the clown show going on now, it's at Walt Disney at the height of his time couldn't have come up with a better Mickey Mouse, Donald Duck crew than what we call Washington. And on both sides, to me, to me, it's a crime syndicate. I don't, I'm a political atheist. I don't believe in any of it.
Well, we all know what's happening, but we're only seeing the tip of the iceberg, as you would say. It's like I said, when I was in Vietnam, I saw white guys fighting on the Viet Cong side. There's always operatives. In fact, when CIA stands for Capitalist Invisible Army, and as I was getting out, the CIA, was called Air America, approached me, and they wanted to know if I would fly for Air America. Starting pay about $85K a year, which is not bad.
Wow.
Well, plus a bonus of about $400.
Wow.
The bonus was to run drugs. So Air America was running drugs to finance covert operations.
Huh?
And years later, you remember this guy named Hassan Pouf? He got shot down because Ollie North was involved in that one. And he was flying drugs for for the Nicaraguans. And the CIA had hired him because that's how they finance covert operations.
Wow.
In fact, the evacuation scene of the people climbing the roof, flying off the last, whatever that was, in 1975, that was a CIA helicopter.
Wow.
It wasn't American. Capitalist Invisible Army. So on the ground, when we were fighting, we didn't know who we were fighting a lot of the times. This is the worst part, Gerald, talking about fake. I've been watching the CBS Evening News. I'm on a carrier, Marine helicopter, gunship pilot, and we're involved in some nasty, nasty battles, killed a lot of people. Thousands of people. They killed a lot of us. And then they'd report the news. And this is Walter Cronkite, da-da-da-da-da. And I'm going, the pilots will go like this and go, that didn't happen. Gerald, we were there. It didn't happen. Yeah. And what they portrayed us, do you remember that there was My Lai and there was the guy shooting the Viet Cong in the head? And all that stuff went on every day. But we had to shoot kids too, because they sent kids after us. And so, Gerald, it rips. I'm a U.S. Marine. I'm an Academy graduate. It rips the soul out of us. And then I come back to the States in 72 and I get spit on by the hippies of the Woodstock generation. And as a pilot, I still remember taxiing into Norton Air Force Base. I took 16 men over. I'm a lieutenant. I take 16 men over, 16 returned. And that was my job. Our job as officers is to bring our men home, one piece. All of them came back alive. We crashed 3 times. We still brought them home alive. Mm-hmm. And the pilots of the aircraft, Air Force pilot says, ladies and gentlemen, as soon as you get off this plane, change into civilian clothes. America has changed. So as soon as we step off, I get hit by eggs and spit on, and all the protesters of that era. And I said to myself, I should have come home and shot communists here. Worse than that, I'm sure I saw Nancy Pelosi's face in that crowd.
Well, these are the guys, the Crosby, Stills, Nashes, and Youngs. And they're the ones that attacked everybody that wouldn't get the COVID jab.
Sweet
the hypocrisy of it.
Yep. Great era. For Gerald, it shaped us. It was a great era.
Yeah.
So we're still fighting back. But the commies are winning. They're in politics today. They're school teachers today.
Well, let's look what happened with the COVID war. It was launched in China, and then Italy was the first one to follow the orders. Get in your house, close down your business.
Yeah.
I'll tell you what to do. I'm in charge. Stand 6 feet apart. Right. The wind blows only in straight lines, 6 feet apart. It doesn't go around. And when you go when you're in an airplane, you put a mask on. But when you eat and drink, you could take the mask off because the COVID knows you're eating and drinking, and it's not going to bother you then. So again, it is the communist. I call it the communist fascist state of America.
Exactly what you're talking about. Yeah, it's fascism.
Yeah.
Fascism is when government takes over business.
Yep.
And that's what, and Fauci is a fascist. Do you know what I mean? He worships to Hitler and Mussolini and those guys.
Well, again, Mussolini called it the merger of state and corporate powers.
Yeah.
I mean, look at this chip bill that they did. This multi-billion-dollar chip bill. Yeah, go open a place up here. Here's money to go do it. Hey, I'm a big guy. I want tax credits. The rest of you workers of slave land, you pay everything. Look what the IRS, $80 billion go into the IRS so they could hunt down the small businesses and we the little people of slave land here. You think the Buffetts and the Gates and all the big shots out there don't know how to beat the system and have the whole deal done? They're not going to get a penny from them. They're going to go after us. So I call it a communist fascist state.
But let me give credit to Italy today, because I'm very proud of your new prime minister. And they're calling her a fascist. That's a good sign. Do you know what I mean? She's as tough as frickin' nails. On the other side, you got this person, Truss or something in England, and she's a new prime minister. And the queen kisses her, the queen dies. That was a sign from God. And right after that, the English pound collapses, the pensions nearly collapse.
Yeah.
And they went back to quantitative easing, in other words, printing money to solve their problems, which goes back to 1971, which Nixon started.
Yep. So tell me about Capitalist Manifesto. This is, I started reading, this is some book.
Thank you.
Tell me more about it. Tell the people what it.
Well, let me say that. We were talking about it before we went on, okay? So I'm living in Hilo, Hawaii, which is Neverland, it's da-da-da-da. And I go from Hilo, Hawaii, this fat surfer kid, and well, first of all, University of Hawaii rejected me. University of Hawaii accepts corpses, you know what I mean? But Naval Academy and Merchant Marine Academy accept me. So I took Merchant Marine Academy in Kings Point, New York, on the island. And that's when we talk about how tough you have to be in New York. So I go from this fat surfer kid to New York City, where I hang out, and I'm going, man, if you're thin-skinned in New York, you're finished. And so I got tough pretty quickly in New York. But in 65, when I went to the academy on Long Island, Kings Point, one of the 5 federal academies, my instructor had me read this book here. And the reason was he was a West Point graduate. And military guys think different than Pussycat U, if you know what I mean. So I'm West Point graduate. He steps up there and we read Marx, Lenin, Stalin, Mao.
Wow.
And I said, why are we studying that? He says, know thy enemy.
Wow. And
he was a B-17 pilot, West Point graduate. He got shot down twice, captured once, escaped once. So he was like kind of Hogan's hero. He had to escape from the Gulag and went to the POW camp. And he was tough as nails, man. And he would talk to me, and the tougher he made it, the more inspired I got. And so what happened, as you remember, there was a 67 war in Israel, and the Israeli Air Force kicked the Arabs' asses, Egyptians' asses. And I said, I want to do that. So I talked to him with this guy, my professor Norton from West Point, B7. I said, what's it like? He says, you'll never know. Find out. I said, God, I want to be like those Israelis. You know what I mean? I want to kick ass and shoot people down and all this stuff. So I turned down a very high-paying job in 1969 when I graduated. My classmates were making $120K a year, tax-free. We're the reason I went to Kings Point with the highest paid graduates in the world.
Wow.
And so I got hired by Standard Oil of California. Why? It's non-union. I refused to join the union because, as Marx said, workers of the world unite. And my poor dad, PhD from Hawaii, was head of the unions. So the opening section of Capitalist Manifesto is how my I refused to join unions. And the NEA, National Education Association, is communist. National Extortion Association, the richest labor union in America, and they influence our education. So when I graduated in '69, I refused to join the union. I'm not a communist. I'm just not a communist, So I go to Pensacola, Florida. Instead of making $120K a year, I'm making $200 a month as a Marine lieutenant. And I wanted to find out what it's like to get shot down.
Wow.
So 1971, I'm flying in Vietnam, a Marine helicopter gunship pilot. And I said, why'd you take gunships? I said, because life expectancy was 30 days. And this is the lesson in life that I got from New York. The more dangerous it is, the smarter you got to be. And what happened is Pussycat U is sending out these TikTok dancer wimps, you know what I mean? Boys who don't know if they're boys or girls yet. I'm going, what has happened to America? Because back in '69, when they said, why'd you choose the Marine Corps? Because I could have flown for the Air Force, Navy or Coast Guard. And when I stood, I was in New York, and there's like 600 guys thinking about which branch of the service they're going to join. The Air Force gets up and said, gentlemen, if you'd like to play golf, join the Air Force. And the Navy says something, Army says something, the Coast Guard says, we save people's lives. And so the Marine stands up, and he's high and tight, man. He is immaculate. He says, any of you fucking pussies want to save lives? Join the Coast Guard. You want to play golf? Join the Air Force. But be clear, Marines kill people. You want to kill people? Join the Marine Corps. And at that point, I said, the more dangerous the mission, the smarter you've got to be. That's New York, right? You've got to be tough in New York. And so I said, and if I'm going to go to war, I want to go to war with guys who want to fight. And you were talking about earlier about how tough New York, if you're not tough, they beat the shit out of you. I mean, this is the '60s. Plus, we had the trash wars and all that stuff in New York, and crime was rampant and all this stuff until Giuliani steps in, and New York was tough. So I'm going to read this quote to you, and this comes from Jordan Peterson. He was one of the prophets of our times. I'm going to do a talk with him in Hollywood. Jordan Peterson, myself, and Dennis Prager. And this is what Jordan Peterson says: if you think tough men are dangerous, wait until you see what weak men are capable of. And not be political. I think we have the weakest leader of all times as president now. And he's a puppet, as you know. My question is, who's pulling the strings? Wait until you see what weak men are capable of. America's economy is crashing. The border is open. Fentanyl is pouring through. They're defunding the police. And he's got the strangest looking people in his cabinet. I won't say anything more than that. But I think you have to be strange looking, not ugly, strange looking, to be a Democrat today. I'm going to get trashed for that one. But I love women. In fact, my aunt in New York City was the prima ballerina of Paris.
Wow.
And she married my uncle. My uncle was Japanese, obviously. And she was my role model for women. And she fought for the French resistance. So she was a prima ballerina, and she was a spy. So she had to drink with the Russians because she knew Russians were the enemy. So she would drink with shot for shot with vodka, just to get info, get the generals, the Russian generals drunk, to pull information. I don't know if she had sex with them, but she did whatever it took. That's how tough she is.
Wow.
And then she was going back to the opera house to dance, and she fell off her bicycle and broke her ankle. She taped her ankle up and danced her last dance.
Wow.
And so, Gerald, I'm surrounded and blessed with great women. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
There's also some strange ones out there, and they all joined the Democratic Party.
Well, again, to me, both of them are, To me, it's a freak show. You know,
It is.
I mean, look. I mean,
Freaks. They're
yeah,
freaks.
look at Mitch McConnell. You can't get a better clown looking than that guy. You know, and yeah, to me, we need. To me, we need a new movement. You're talking about what happened in Italy with Maloney.
Yeah,
It was a new. It's a new movement.
but this is we're talking about this. We can blame our leaders, but that makes us weak men. And we're talking about before the show began. It's tough for us to become dangerous.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? I can blame Biden. I can blame Trump. I can blame this. But if we're weak men or women, we got nothing to say.
No, nothing.
It's time we stand up like Maloney. It's time we fight back. And that's why I wrote Capitalist Manifesto. It begins with an attack on the teacher system, education system.
Well, as I mentioned off air, Judge Napolitano, who I do a podcast with every Wednesday, he said it's not an education system, it's a government system. It's not a public school system. And again, that was brought to us by Woodrow Wilson. He's the guy that started it. And that's the guy that also gave us the Federal Reserve, World War I, and federal income tax. Wonderful guy.
Yeah.
Princeton. As I say, Harvard, Princeton, Yale, bullets, bombs, and banks, Yeah. It's one big club and you ain't in it, like George Carlin said.
And I add one more thing, because you and I are both New Yorkers at heart. This book here, Manifesto, said that communism was coming in 2 stages. Stage 1 happened in 1930, when the Frankfurt School of Germany sent teachers to Columbia University Teachers College. And that's when the rioting on campuses started. You remember that? But in the 60s, Columbia was one of the first schools that rioted. And so I'm at school in New York. I'm in an academy. I'm walking around in military uniforms. I go, what's happening to America? So that was 1930. And so Dennis Prager calls Columbia University something. He hates them. It started in education. And so that's why Capitalist Manifesto, I go after the National Education Association, or what Forbes calls the National Extortion Association, because all they do is take our money and program our kids to be TikTok dancers. Oh my God. You gotta be kidding me.
No, it's gone down terribly.
Yeah.
You have a quote in here by Nikita Khrushchev in 1959.
My favorite quote.
Your children's children will live under communism. You Americans are so gullible. No, you won't accept communism outright, but we will keep feeding you small doses of socialism until you finally wake up and find you already have communism. We will not have to fight you. We will so weaken your economy until you fall like overripe fruit into our hands.
Gerald, thank you for reading that. The whole Capitalist Manifesto is a simple book to read, because we've been warned since 1848, when this book was written. We've been warned. We have been warned, but nobody listens because the education system is controlled by academic elites.
Yeah.
Or Marxist. So that's why I wrote Capitalist Manifesto, is it gives you ammunition to fight back with. As I said, as Peterson says, if you think tough men are dangerous, wait until you see what weak men are capable of. There's nobody weaker than a school teacher. They got no money. They got no power. They're horrible. My whole family are school teachers. I'm speaking against them. When I read this book here, Communist Manifesto, I realized my family, they're all good people. They're Marxists. They believe in taxation. They believe in the abolition of private property. They think the rich are evil, and they all belong in labor unions. And that's what
one of my top trends for 2022 is unionization, and it's happening. More and more, they're unionizing.
Because they're weak people.
And
please remember, they're not bad people. My mother and father and my brothers and sisters, all my friends who are school teachers, they're good people. But like I said, economics is kind of religion. So Marxism a religion, capitalism, socialism a religion, just like there's Catholic, Christian, Buddhist, and they all have the different philosophies. So this guy, Jordan Peterson, was a school teacher, a professor in Canada, and they kicked him out. They did him a favor. Now he's a fucking multimillionaire because he's the hottest podcaster going. He's an influencer in the TikTok world. You know what I mean? So that's what I'm saying.
So now we see this going down. Again, my greatest concern, as I said, to me, is World War III.
Yes.
I believe it's already started. The cover of our Trends Journal, by the way, on February 22nd, 2 days before Russia invaded Ukraine, it said COVID war, Ukraine war, World war.
Right.
There it is. There it is.
Yeah.
And so that's my great concern. And because when all else fails, they take you to war.
Yeah.
You look what happened after the Great Depression. Oh, it ended with World War II. Go back to the 9/11. The day before 9/11, the NASDAQ was down only 66%. In our Trends Journal in October 1999, we forecast the dot-com bust, and we said it would happen by the second quarter of 2000, which it did. Little Georgie Bush, the daddy's boy, born on third base and thought he had a home run. That guy, yeah, his popularity was plummeting. 9/11 happens. Yep. 88% of the people supported the Afghan war. It only went on for 20 years.
Right.
And they boosted up the economy artificially with that subprime mortgages and the derivative scams. Yeah. So here we are, Robert, at a very, very critical time. We're seeing the equity markets, they had a little boost in the beginning of this month, but now they're on the downward tail again. Where do you see things going? And what do you suggest people consider doing?
Oh, you're feeding me a softball there, Jerry. But the reason I love your publication, the Trends Journal, is because that's what we're supposed to study. So in 2008, I said, oh my God, they're just pushing the can forward. This guy Bernanke is a criminal. Central banks are Marxist, centralized economy. So I wrote this book here in 2013. I write the book because people will say, well, he's just joining. This is Rich Dad's prophecy. This came out in 2013 after 2008. So everybody was euphoric because, the subprime crash and all that stuff. And I said, why the biggest stock market crash in history is still coming. And that's why you subscribe to the Trends Journal. It's still coming. I've got to change the cover. It's here. So it arrived in 2020 when President Trump gets knocked out by social media. And as Jordan Peterson says, if you think tough men are dangerous, wait until you see what weak men can do. It's a trend. One more thing is he took us out of Afghanistan. You know what happened the next day? Saudi Arabia joined Russia because up until then, the US dollar was a petrodollar and everybody had to buy oil in dollars. And Saudi Arabia says, America's weak, and then plus America's screwing, they were playing games with money. So right after we abandoned Afghanistan, just check history. Saudi Arabia joined Russia. They're called the BRICS today. Brazil, Russia, India, China, South Africa. So the BRICS now have their new currency called a gold-backed CB, central bank crypto yuan, gold-backed. And so the BRICS are 70% of the world population. And when they shift to the gold-backed yuan, they're going to wipe out the dollar, which America is, as saying, Hawaii, aloha, because the dollar's going to go. So that's why I wrote this book, and I can prove I wrote it because it's in book 2013.
Wow.
So that's why, Gerald, your publication, The Trends, is vital. If you're reading the New York Times, I don't know where you are, man. I mean, you must be in La La Land. The 1619 Project, what a bunch of bullshit that is.
Yep.
America is not systemically racist, but the people calling America racist are the racist.
Of course they're.
You know what
As
I
I
mean?
say, what racist nation would elect a black president? You know, it's not a racist nation. Are there racists? Of course. Are there anti-Semites? Of course. Are there anti this? Of course. You got a population, but don't call the whole population one thing because of a few people. I want to go back to what you were saying about the Saudi Arabia. I didn't know that when they right after Afghanistan they moved to Russia, because something else big happened with Saudi Arabia just last week. And that was, well, first of all, Saudi Arabia and China have now not, they're on the side of Russia. And what happened with the Biden administration, they were putting pressure on Saudi Arabia not to cut back on oil production. And Saudi Arabia said, we're cutting back.
Yeah.
And they cut back on oil production, and China and Russia will only accept payment of oil in rubles now.
Yeah.
And we saw what happened when they cut back 2 million barrels a day. They said they're going to cut back. We saw oil prices jump up like another $6-7 a barrel, and it's heading back to $100 a barrel. So you can see, just as you wrote and just what you said way back then, that their alliances now with the BRICS, this is a whole new game being played. So what do you suggest? Again, I don't give financial advice, but this is what I think and what I say. What do you think people should do now in this very critical time as a rich dad, poor dad, and playing the game as the game's going down?
Well, it goes back to, what does school teach you about money? Is that a mistake? No. Teachers are Marxist. They think the rich are evil. That's what they're teaching. Or you're a guy or a girl, whatever it is. The greatest asset you have is between this year and this year, the brain. It's also your greatest liability. And so that's why I wrote Rich Dad, Poor Dad. I create the cash flow board game. And the reason it's a board game is I learned everything about money playing Monopoly. Yeah. It's not rocket science. It's 4 greenhouses, 1031 tax deferred exchange, red hotel. Because my rich dad owned, you go to Hawaii today, the Hyatt Regency, that's his. He started with nothing. That's capitalism. He never went to school. So today I own hotels. I also own oil wells, not oil stocks. I touch nothing. This I'm not recommending. I'm not an advisor either. But I refuse to touch anything the Fed, the Treasury, or Wall Street can print. That includes the dollar. So, and my background from the Academy in New York, Kings Point on the island, is my major was oil.
Wow.
I'm a tanker driver. I drove oil tankers. I was going to either go to passenger liners or oil tankers.
Wow.
And I was fascinated by oil because oil is the energy for civilization. Energy is, if you don't have oil, we collapse. So I studied oil, and that's why I got hired by Standard Oil of California. And I drove tankers. My first port of call was Valdez, Alaska.
Wow.
I'm a brand new third mate, 21 years old, making thousands and thousands of dollars a month. And I'm standing there looking at this oil being pumped into Valdez. That was where the Valdez crash was and all that stuff. I didn't do that. That was another Academy graduate. I know that guy. I didn't do it. So he hit the frickin' reef. I missed the reef. But then we pump all this oil in the carrier, and I'm on the tanker. I'm going, I'm on the wrong side of this equation. I should be the guy that owns that oil.
Wow.
Today, I own oil wells, and this is the story. Wow. This is the story. So in just recently in 2000, one of the first things Biden did besides pull us out of Afghanistan was shifted Saudi Arabia to the BRICS nations. The other thing that happened was that I'm pumping oil at $30 a barrel. So Biden, next move, he cancels a Keystone XL pipeline. I went, oh my God, this guy's a communist. He's a weak leader. He's a puppet, not a communist, he's a puppet. And he can't even walk off the stage without getting lost. So what happened was in 2020, in 2020, he took oil off. He canceled the XL pipeline, which made America was the biggest oil producer around, exporter too. My oil was being sold for $30 a barrel. Next day, $130.
Wow.
So I'm getting rid, and I pay no taxes. Because as maybe another quote to you from Marx, it's all in Capitalist Manifesto. A heavier progressive income tax is necessary for the proper development of communism. So Biden comes out with 75 or 8,500 new tax agents. Gestapo, they're going after small business.
Yep, that's what I said. Yeah.
Wait, so they can't touch me. So I'm standing there going, he's killing the country since 2000 after Trump gets, and Trump's my friend, wrote 2 books with the guy, great guy. He knocks them off and going, oh my God, communism has taken over America. He's going to bankrupt America, just as Khrushchev warned in 1959. So I'm getting richer, but you know who's crashing? The middle class now. The poor have always been poor. As the Bible says, the poor will always be amongst us. There'll always be poor people. But when he cut the Keystone XL pipeline, then blamed Russia for doing it, I think that was funny. But when he did that, the middle class got screwed. So as they're sitting there pumping gas in their leased SUV, wondering why is gas going up, why are food prices going up, it's all because of oil. So in 2020, when Biden cut the Keystone pipeline off and cut off Afghanistan, he screwed this country big time. And it's exactly as Khrushchev says in that quote, you will fall into our hands like overripe fruit. And that's why I wrote the quote by Jordan Peterson, if you think tough men are dangerous, what weak men are capable of. We're the weakest leader in history. And the question is, how weak are we? You and me, Gerald. Do you know what I mean? If we don't fight back, we can't blame them, is what I'm saying. We got to fight back. I'm a U.S. Marine.
I'm a man, that I try to do the best I can fighting, and I don't stop.
Oh, you do a great job, man. You provide the best thing of all, information and knowledge and wisdom, truth, facts, trends. As an investor, I'm writing trends all the time. In 2008, when the market crashed, I said, hallelujah, thank you, Jesus. I backed up the truck, borrowed $300 million, and bought the best real estate in the world at bargain basement prices. And today, silver is the biggest bargain in the world, simply because I was buying silver at $50. Today, it's about 25 if you can get it, because you can't get it today. Silver is consumed, and these greenies, the Green New Deal guys, they're going to drive the price of silver up. So all these idiots are saying, oh, no, silver is at an all-time low. I said, you stupid. I mean, how can you be such a highly educated idiot? Silver is low. Buy it now. You're going to wait till it's 100, 500? That's how stupid people are. And they have no idea what's going on. They're pumping gas in their SUV going broke. Food prices are going through the roof because food is provided by fertilizer. That's why Sri Lanka went bust. The greenies cut them off from fertilizer. The greenies are the most terrible people on earth. I'm a greenie too. You're not a greenie. We don't want to kill the environment. I love that tree back there. But I'm saying we have to fight back, Gerald. We have to be tough men, or we can't bitch anymore.
Oh, I agree.
Bitch.
And going back to silver, silver is used in all the computers, and unlike gold, they throw it away after it's gone. You don't save it, and also with the going green, you're more and more solar paneling, and there's silver in that, of course. And I bought silver at $40, but my first buy of gold, I started buying gold in I think it was 77 or 78 at $187.50 an ounce.
Wow.
And all I did since then is I buy it and I put it away, buy it, 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 put it away. And I played the markets too. And, in the futures markets. That's how, by the way, I ended up quitting my job when I was the chief government affairs. I was number 2 guy running a major trade association at 30 years old. And anyway, I started playing the futures market when the Iranian crisis broke out. As everybody was going nuts, I said, what's going to happen with oil and gold prices?
Yeah.
So I started playing the futures market. I didn't know what I was doing. And I turned $5,000 into almost $750,000.
Jesus.
And that's when I quit my job. And that's when I started the Trends Research Institute, because that's when I realized, don't listen to what the media and the politicians are saying. Think for yourself. Look at the facts. Don't get caught up in the propaganda. So as everybody was caught in the propaganda war, I was looking at where things are going. And now we're in that exact same place now, but a different time with the Ukraine war and it escalating like this. So,
and how about the North Korea firing a rocket over Japan?
Yeah.
We're going to war. I agree on it. We're going to war.
Yeah.
We're already at war. It's called financial.
I know, we're at war. Yeah. Like they say, World War I began when they assassinated the Archduke Ferdinand in Sarajevo. What's an Archduke and what's a Sarajevo? Wasn't things leading up to it? So anyway, I wanted, in closing out, I would like for you, again, to say to the people, and again, everyone, this is a book, and of course, everybody knows this book, but these are 2 books you need to read if you want to prepare, prevail, and prosper in the times ahead, because it's also you becoming you and not anybody else. And as Robert said, you better be a fighter. Yeah. And these books have the fight in them, the spirit in them, and the courses of action in them. So in closing, what are your words to the people at this very difficult time we're going through? Number 1, where do you see things going? And just a closing out to say for people, think about taking action like this.
Well, number 1, you have to get tougher. Because if you're a weak person, man or woman, you got no hope anyway. Just blame everybody else. I would read the Trends Journal, because I do. I'm going, if you don't know the trend, you're finished. But this is your greatest asset. Left ear, right ear is called your brain. But it's also your greatest liability, since our schools teach us nothing about money. And then you follow what these idiots tell you to do. Don't fight the Fed. The Fed's got your back. And the Fed, let me tell you, the Fed has only one purpose, is to make the rich richer. If you think they're for you, you're crazy. So the Fed makes me richer, but it makes everybody else poorer. But I have this. I study trends. I think the reason you did so well is you're a trends guy. You're a natural trend seeker. And if you look at the trends, this economy is going down big time. And that's why I wrote, Prophecy is the biggest stock market in history is coming. Wrote that in 2013. I got to change the cover. It's here.
It's here.
And the baby boomers are going to get wiped out, because we're the first generation of the 401k.
Yep.
And we started following CNBC. Jim Cramer, everybody calls it the Cramer put. Whatever he recommends, don't follow. I'm just being facetious, but we have to be tough people. We have to be New Yorkers. We have to be tough like Trump. He fought the labor unions. That's all he fights in New York. He's a tough man. And then now we have a puppet called Biden. I'm not trying to be political, but just look at what's happening to this country.
Oh, so it's gone.
If we don't get tougher, we can't blame anybody else, Gerald. That's my message.
What do you think about gold?
Gold is God's metal. Silver is God's money. As at J.P. Morgan, another New Yorker said, gold is money, everything else is credit. And that's why in 1971, the dollar became credit, it became debt. And so I bought the richest gold mine in America. That's a sample. It's called the Trixie mine. This thing here is 671 ounces per ton. The richest gold mine in the world. It's in Utah. The reason I learned the lesson is my first gold mine was in China. And as soon as I struck gold, they took it. So I stopped eating Chinese food. I don't like communists, Joe. I don't like them. If you like them, it's a free country. You can love those commies. Not the Chinese people, but I'm saying the philosophy of communism.
Yeah. We've become, yeah.
The
Well, look,
philosophy of communism is the abolition of private property, and that's what they're doing.
Again, as I said, when the COVID war, we followed China. If the thing broke out in the Yunnan province and the Chinese way, you must obey.
Right.
And that's exactly where we are. And as you said, with gold and the information that you're giving is priceless.
Yeah.
And
you can pass gold on and silver on to your great grandkids. The dollar is toilet paper. It's exactly what you said.
Well, thank you so much. And everyone, again, this is a book that if you want to be enlightened, you want to get tough, you want to fight, and you want to be free, this is a book for you to read. Yeah. And by the way, you know what I call, you call it communist state. I call it the USSA, the United Soviet States of America. Yeah.
Well, the communist
that's what we become.
California.
Oh, Maron. Yeah. Thank you so much, Robert Kiyosaki. And everyone, again, a book you have to read if you want to get ahead, Capitalist Manifesto, and of course, a book of books that is going to be a legend in centuries to come, Rich Dad, Poor Dad.
Capitalist Manifesto will make your blood boil, which is good. Maybe you'll fight back. So I'm going to close with, we're talking about how I grew up in New York, and you have to be tough in New York. Yeah. You know, you can't be thin-skinned.
Well, that was the old New York. You know, I'm a Napolitano. I'm a Napolitano born in the Bronx. You know, it's a whole different trip. Now it's wear your mask, be a good boy, do what we tell you. It's a whole different New York.
Yeah, become a TikTok dancer today.
Yeah.
But anyway, as one New Yorker to New York, I'll say what the Marines say: Semper Fi.
You got it.
Faithful. We'll always fight. You can count on us to fight. You and me will always fight. Semper Fi.
You got it. Thank you so much. And thank you. And again, don't forget Rich Dad, Poor Dad, and Capitalist Manifesto. Thank you so much.
Fight back. Thank you.
Okay. Bye-bye now.